A soldier in the United States Army that deploys to a combat zone is making pretty darn good money because they're getting their base pay, their normal paycheck that is not getting taxed at all. There's no federal, no state taxes coming out of the paycheck, so they're receiving that paycheck tax-free. They're also receiving hazardous duty pay. They also receive possibly some COLA type of pay and other types of incentives. So you can potentially make some pretty darn good money if you're deployed to a combat zone. And on my first deployment to a combat zone, I was making pretty darn good money. And I also spent a lot of it too. So let me tell you that story. That video starts right now. So there I was, a young soldier at E5, a sergeant, deployed to Iraq for my very first deployment. I was single, I had very few bills, so the bills that I did have to pay were very easy to pay, and everything else was basically money that I was saving. I think the only bill I really had during this time frame was like a car payment because I had a new car, I guess. I mean, I bought it like in 2001, now it was 2005, so the car was only about 5 years old, so I still had some money left on a car payment that I owed on, and then I still had to maintain car insurance since I didn't, own the car or anything, so I had to have full coverage, and I think that was really about it. I think I had put my cell phone on like a suspenseful thing because you can do that. You can put your cell phone on like hold so they're not, charging you a monthly charge anymore, and you're not, receiving service to that cell phone since I couldn't use it anyways, and then I just resume service when I come back. And I think that was it. I think that was all my bills. So really I just had two bills, my car payment and my car insurance, leaving the rest of my paycheck for either buying stuff that I wanted out there in Iraq, because sometimes you had money to be able to spend, maybe to buy something from like the little bazaar or the little PX. At this deployment, we only had a small semi-trailer, so there wasn't a lot of options for buying stuff, but you could use the money for those kind of items. So at that particular deployment, there wasn't much there, so it was kind of hard to really spend that money anyways in the first place. So nonetheless, after bills and maybe a few things occasionally here and there, the rest of that money was basically being saved. Roughly, I want to say I probably had about $20,000 in my bank account by the time everything was all done. By the time I was done with that deployment, roughly, give or take, about $20,000 in my bank account. That is the most I think I have ever seen in my bank account, probably still to this day. Now, I ended up spending, basically all of it, all of that $20,000, and probably all of it maybe within the course of 1 year. Not all of it was really blowing the money or anything necessarily bad. Some of it was on good stuff, some of it was on fun stuff, so I wouldn't necessarily say it was like wasteful. I mean, maybe some of it was wasteful, but probably the majority of it was maybe good, I feel, in my opinion. So because I still had that car, I had that car, I had a car payment, I wanted to get rid of that car payment. So I think I owed maybe $5,000 still left on that car payment. It was pretty close to being paid off. I probably would have paid it off within, with the normal car payment, would have paid it off maybe in 6 months or something like that, maybe a little bit more than that. But nonetheless, I was like, let's get this thing done and over with. I got the money, let's pay off that car. So I dropped that $5,000 on the rest of the car payment, so that way my car was paid off. That was definitely nice, right? Not having to deal with the car payment anymore, right? I had that car payment for about 5 years. It was probably on the last year of that probably term for that loan that I had originally done with that brand new car in 2001. But I had that car for a long time. And in fact, I had that car, I think all the way up until about 2010. I think I had that car for a good 10 years before the hail destroyed it here in Colorado and ended up getting totaled out. But nonetheless, I was pretty excited to, get rid of that car payment. So that car was paid off. One less bill I had to worry about. At this time, after my first deployment, is when I was trying to really get serious about video production. I really had the goal of wanting to start my own video production, to make music videos, documentaries, all sorts of things that I kind of had the idea of the goal that I wanted to do. While I was still in Iraq, I was still making a few videos here and there, some fun videos with some friends, while on deployment, and I was trying to do a little mini documentary about what I was doing on that deployment, which is currently still on YouTube. It's basically my first upload on YouTube. So when I came back, I wanted to get really serious. I had been talking to some local bands. I wanted to be able to shoot music videos, shoot some concert videos. And to be able to do that, I needed a more serious camera. I actually still have some of my first cameras. I think they're back there somewhere. But I had some regular, small cassette, handheld cameras, some digital cameras. And that's what I was kind of, for the most part, recording with before. But I wanted to get serious. So I dropped a lot of money on some serious camera equipment. I roughly spent probably a little under $10,000 on this camera package, and it was insane at the time, and at the time it was high end. Now that camera is not worth anything near that. I think I have a video somewhere. It might be private on this channel now. I think it was like in the early days of the Christopher Chaos kind of channel when I yet hadn't kind of developed a, a niche for doing army type of content. But this camera was this Canon XL1 or XL2, I think it was. This is Canon XL2. So this really nice high-end camera for the time. It shot in standard definition because at that time HD was still fairly newish. I mean, it was around, but it was more expensive. But this one was a standard definition camera that shot really great quality. You probably could sort of up-res to HD if you really wanted to. And it had a lot of, high-tech features that are, things that people looked for when they're filming documentaries. In fact, these are the cameras for like a long time that's what they usually filmed like Jackass with. When they were filming the TV show Jackass on MTV and the movie and everything, I think these are the cameras they were using for quite a while for that particular TV show. And actually a lot of TV shows at the time were using that camera to film their TV shows. So it was a great camera to be able to probably, film my little, music videos and documentaries with and everything. But the whole package, it was like the camera and it was some accessories plus a case for the camera and everything. And it was probably roughly almost $10,000 for this camera. And today, even though that camera alone was probably only worth about $8,000, $9,000, somewhere around there, and the rest was in accessories, if I was to try to sell that camera today, I'd probably only get maybe about $500 for that camera. So it'd be horrible to try to resell it. I have it somewhere, so I actually need to dig it out of storage and put it like on one of my background things in one of my office area or something like that, in my main editing area, just for kind of for show. But nonetheless, I still have that camera. Like I said, nowadays it's only worth about $500 or maybe $800 at the most, but back then it was probably an $8,000 or $9,000 camera. So that was a huge chunk of that money that went towards that. I also spent $6,000 on a motorcycle. I had somebody that I knew that had this nice Honda CBR. I think it was a Honda CBR 600, I think is what it was called, but the bike was nice. It was souped up. It had like a cool carbon fiber exhaust system. It had this racing fuel injectors and everything. And at that time, he owed $6,000 left on it before it was paid off. And he wasn't really riding it much anymore. And he really just kind of wanted to get rid of the bill. So he was like, hey, this bike's probably worth more than $6,000, but that's what I owe on it. So I'll sell it to you for $6,000. So flat out bought that bike for $6,000. At this time too, I had like kind of some familiarization with, riding dirt bikes and everything. I really didn't have any familiarization with riding a street bike. So I went to like the motorcycle course on Fort Carson to get my motorcycle license and went through the course and everything like that to, because you had to do that in that time in the Army, because in order to be allowed to ride on post, you had to have that certification and everything. So I went through that certification process, which also allowed me to easily get like a motorcycle license, which I still have, even though I don't have a motorcycle anymore, which we'll get to that here in a minute. But, I went through that whole course and kind of was trying to figure out how to ride a street bike at that time. Now, because I had that bike basically paid for, I didn't have a payment or anything that I needed to do on that. I ended up just putting liability insurance on it, which ends up being a big mistake in the end of what happened to that bike. But I put liability insurance on it, so I just had a very, very small insurance payment that I had to make monthly on that motorcycle. But I was trying to get used to riding it, and just as I was getting pretty comfortable with understanding kind of the differences with riding a street bike compared to what I was used to with like a dirt bike type of thing, it got stolen from my apartment complex that I had, and that thing was gone. And since I just had liability, it didn't cover anything. So that thing was gone, never recovered, and I never got a dime back from it. I probably had the bike for probably a little less than a year. It was probably getting close to a year or something like that. And like I said, I was just getting pretty familiar with riding it and everything like that. And I was getting really used to, how to ride it and getting comfortable with riding it and everything like that. And then it disappeared and it was gone. $6,000, I guess, down the drain. Now, also when I came back from that deployment, I was sick of living in the barracks. I didn't want to live in the barracks anymore. I was still a single soldier at that time. I was an E5, I was a sergeant, but I didn't want to live in the barracks anymore. So I had talked to my leadership and was like, hey, I want to go get an apartment off post. I understand I'm not going to get BAH for it since I'm still a single soldier, but nonetheless, I would like to go and move off post so I don't have to live in the barracks, and they were okay with that. I essentially still had to like maintain a barracks room in the barracks, and if something came about, then I would be stuck having to like help clean up in the barracks and stuff like that. But the barracks room stayed empty because I had an apartment off post, which I needed to furnish. Most of the furniture I got, from some friends and some other individuals that had some hand-me-down furniture to give me, and then there were a few other things I had to buy. So, I spent some money on like some decorations, on like a TV, an entertainment center, bed frame, and a mattress, and box springs, and a desk, and all sorts of other stuff for the apartment. So there was a good chunk of money that went to furnishing my apartment. So at this point, you know, after, you know, paying off my car, buying a motorcycle, furnishing my apartment type of thing, I didn't have a whole lot left. I probably still had several thousands of dollars left, so that was still pretty nice. And so with that kind of remaining chunk of money, I did have like a lot of fun. I remember, you know, I was eating out a lot. So I was going out to, you know, ordering food or going to pick up food or going to dinner with friends or whatever. I rarely was eating dinner in my apartment, even though I had now the freedom of the barracks, you know, getting away from that, and I had my own, you know, oven and a stove and everything. I really didn't know how to cook for myself very well. So nonetheless, that resulted in me going out to eat a lot. So I ended up spending a lot of money on going out to eat and a lot of other things. I was going to movies whenever I wanted to. If we wanted to go check out some kind of cool attractions that cost some money, I was going and doing that. I was buying, you know, maybe movies, you know, because at that time still DVDs were a big thing, kind of a thing. If I, you know, wanted a video game, if I wanted whatever, I was buying whatever the hell I wanted to. That whole time frame, that lasted a good year. That was a good year of living the life as if I was, I wouldn't say rich, but, you know, could kind of do whatever I wanted, right? Didn't have a whole lot of bills. You know, I had at this time now rent though, so some of that would go to like rent, but I was also still making a paycheck, of course, but now it's getting taxed. But nonetheless, you know, a lot of that extra funding, you know, went to living a fairly glorious life for a good year of just not caring and doing whatever the hell I wanted. So I don't regret it. Maybe the only thing I really do regret is not having that full coverage on the motorcycle and maybe not locking it up more often type of thing to prevent it from getting stolen in the first place. But all in all, I don't regret my spending habits. Sure, I could have done something better with it that maybe would have benefited me more, but hell, it was fun. And especially after coming back from a combat deployment, you don't know what's going to happen on that combat deployment. You're back from that combat deployment and super excited to be alive and living life. You don't give a crap. You want to enjoy the hell out of that life, because who knows what could have possibly happened. And I knew I was going to be going back to Iraq as well because of the crazy deployment schedules that were happening in that time frame. So I had a fun time. There's possibly even some viewers out there that are watching this video right now that maybe had a similar situation where you were deployed to a combat zone. Maybe you saved a lot of money, maybe you didn't. I want to hear from you guys down in the comment section down below. What was something that you did with some of that combat pay money? Were you able to save it? Did it have to get spent on other things? You had a lot of bills still at that time frame, so you really didn't get to save anything. If you did get to save it, what did you, maybe use that money for, or what did you buy with it? I want to hear about that down in the comment section down below. For my other viewers, maybe don't have that experience, let's say you have 20 grand in your bank account right now. What would you do with it? I want to hear from you in the comment section down below. What would you do if right now you went and checked your bank account and magically, for whatever reason, you had an extra $20,000 in that bank account? Let me know in the comment section down below, what would you do with that? So there you go. There's a story about how I blew all my combat pay on all sorts of fun times and great memories and everything. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you're hitting that thumbs up. Make sure you're leaving a comment to help out the YouTube algorithm. Make sure you're subscribed. I'm Christopher Chaos. Check out these videos right here because they're amazing and you don't want to go anywhere. Watch these right now. See you next time though. See ya.